But to begin with, let me summarize what all I did for anthropology, because this is the first time I was writing with anthropology, and I wanted to make sure that I was not repeating any of the mistakes I had done earlier with my geography optional. So the first thing I did was strictly stick to syllabus and previous year's question. So I prepared notes on all the syllabus topics, and these notes were very crisp, never more than 1 or 2 A4 size sheets per topic. And I generally prepared them by referring to the standard textbooks and any other sources that were available, but mostly standard textbooks. My objective was to understand a topic properly and have a one-page notes on that, so that if any question comes out of that, I should be able to answer. So in order to understand the topic properly, I refer to standard textbooks, I refer to YouTube videos and any other material available. But I made sure after going through all of that, I understood the topic. See, if you do not understand the concepts and topics in an optional subject, you won't be able to answer the questions. Even anthropology, if you look at the last 2 years, the questions have become slightly more analytical compared to earlier when the questions were more direct. So understanding the topic is very important. And second is how to decide how much to study, as in how should the width and depth of the coverage of a topic should be. For this, I always had previous year's questions on the site. So topic wise previous year's questions, and I prepared my notes and I studied only as per those previous year's questions. So let's say there's a topic on classical evolutionism or cognitive theories. So I first looked at how much deep are they asking questions. So and how analytical are the questions. I tried to grasp that, and then I opened my textbook and then I read the topic, and I read it to the point where I was ready to summarize it in few points. And let's say, so I had different methods of making notes for different topics. So for example, if it's a theories topic, I would have an introduction, I would have a conclusion, I would always summarize the theory into 4 or 5 basic postulates. Anything beyond 4 or 5 basic postulate means you have not really understood the theory, and you cannot even replicate it in the actual exam. So why bother to have more than 4 or 5 postulates? Any theory never have more than 4 or 5 postulates. After postulates, then I wrote down 1 or 2 works of the scholars, very specific works with scholar names that I can quote. And for every theory, I included contemporary relevance, whether they asked or I have not asked. I always included contemporary relevance. For example, I was going through a topper copy of Mr. Maurya Bharadwaj from, I think, 2020 or 19, I don't remember. So when I was going through his answer copies, there was a question on symbolic anthropology. So in the conclusion, he mentioned, if we see, we have practices such as Jallikattu today, which have become controversial. So symbolic anthropology helps us analyze these issues, because these are symbols in the society, especially, for instance, the Jallikattu. So that is why we need to look at these practices from a symbolic anthropology point of view, so that we can understand them better and regulate them better. So this is such a nice point to quote, because he is connecting very static theory to what is happening today and what we are seeing in the newspapers today. Now that is called as contemporary relevance. You can relate to contemporary events only when you have understood the concept well. So in most of my answers, theories or otherwise, I try to bring in some contemporary aspect. This is one thing. And secondly, being smart about using paper 1 examples in paper 2, paper 2 examples in paper 1. This also reduces the burden of collecting examples, and you can just keep switching. And another thing that helped me was having pre-made introductions and conclusions for all the syllabus topic. So I had a document where it had 3 columns. The first column was syllabus topic name, for example, classic evolutionism or Paleolithic period, whatever, the left column. The second column was introduction. The third column was conclusion. So for every syllabus topic of paper 1 and paper 2, I had these ready. And whenever you're studying, let's say you're revising some topic, it's easy to think about a good conclusion and a good introduction. You don't have to like look around or anything. Just think, in the conclusion, maybe how can I relate it to contemporary events? Or in introduction, can I quote somebody and introduce this topic? So the point is, it's easy to do this conclusion introduction part when you're preparing rather than in the exam on spot. So when you have introductions and conclusions ready, the time you take for an answer reduces, and you already have like very good punch conclusions. So even if your body is not so good, maybe looking at the conclusion, the person might feel that whoever is checking that you understood the topic and you can relate it to the contemporary world. So this is something that really helped me. I made all these conclusions and introductions beforehand, and I kept mugging them up. So whenever I would write a mock test or so, I try to ensure that I'm incorporating these. And next, I also made several diagrams. See, these diagrams do not have to be like very complicated diagrams, very simple diagrams, flow charts, etc. You can make them only if you're conscious about making them. So let's say you're studying a topic. You think about, okay, how can I put this topic in diagrammatic form? So that conscious thought has to be there. So that can be done, and I refer to topper copies extensively. So whenever I found something diagrammatic in any topper copy, I immediately took it, and I was hell bent on using it. If a question were to come on that topic, then I must use the diagram. So that's how the approach should be. So if you look at all this, one thing becomes clear, that you have to write to get marks. You have to be very ruthless about how can I get that extra mark. It doesn't matter like how deep your knowledge is or how wide your knowledge is. What matters is, are you or are you not able to get that extra mark out of each question? So approach every mains with that focus, GS or optional, how to get that extra mark. And it is these small things that help you increase your marks. So this was my overall strategy. And secondly, I also practiced a lot of tests for anthropology as well as general studies. I wrote sectional tests, full length tests over a period of time until a point where I was comfortable writing answers. So in the actual exam, I was on an autopilot mode because I had practiced to that extent that I had no difficulty writing answers. It really didn't matter how difficult the questions or what questions they were asking. I was able to write a decent answer irrespective of how difficult the question was. So this came after a lot of practice. Initially, because anthropology was new to me, I was very reluctant to write answers or write full-length tests. But somehow my friends pushed me to go and appear for the full sectional tests or full-length tests, and slowly my scores began to improve. And I learned how to write better by looking at others' copies, by looking at toppers' copies. So in and all, like prepare in keeping in mind how to get marks. It's not about the content. It's not about your depth of knowledge. It's about how well you can write or present what little you know. And secondly, how well you can practice. So practice as much as possible and take the suggestions given by the evaluators seriously and work on every suggestion.